A child experiencing being touched inappropriately, if you're one of them that has had this kind of abuse in your childhood, this is the second part of Healing Abuse in a Spiritual Awakening. Please watch it only if you feel that you're not going to be triggered, because it is a bit more potent than the first post. What happens practically, on a practical level, for somebody who has gone through being touched inappropriately? So what happens when you're touched inappropriately? Although that you are being touched inappropriately, that touch is going to create certain sensations. Those certain sensations, because you're feeling those sensations and you don't have a power to stop those sensations as a child, right? The first thing that will lodge inside of you, apart from I feel trapped, I don't want this to be happening to me, is the guilt. You will have a guilt for feeling sensations that you do not have any control over, not even now as an adult. So much so that this guilt seeps into any other relationship you've had after that. Now, what happens? The very first relationship in which you encounter that sort of intimacy can go many different ways, depending on how healed you are, depending on how active that trauma is. Because whether or not that trauma that is lodged inside of us, that is active, it is always going to be there, because the scarring is lifetime, unless and until there is a profound experience that is so profound that it is able to dislodge that trauma. It could be a number of techniques that you do all together, or just one technique that you employ, that you're able to then get through this. But with an awakening, it is something that is a sure way of getting you out of this. What happens to that first relationship and the dynamics? It can be pretty brutal, and if anything, it would have the impact of re-traumatizing you if that relationship happened when your brain is still going through development. Our brains carry on developing up until we're at least the ages of 21 to 28, right? Your brain is still developing, and this means that whatever is happening is still has in it the possibility of creating an implant, in creating a map of how things ought to be with us. Which is why, if you're at university or higher education, or even in high school, and you've met somebody and there has been an encounter that has brought that intimacy about, rather than it being intimacy, it's going to become a very traumatic event for somebody who has had trauma. Not for everyone, but for most of us who've been there. That touch in itself will create a sensation. That sensation that was created at the very first time, as we know, brings feelings of guilt. The second thing that will happen is, or may happen, is that you may get into depression, right? And the third thing, that you may put all your eggs into this one basket, and you will think that this one person that has touched you, that the way that they have, is it. And they will be the Messiah for you. They will be the answer to absolutely everything. So much so that when you pour your heart out to them and explain to them that you're unable to maintain that kind of intimacy, or that you need some time, or that maybe you're having some trouble with this, or that even that you're simply just opening up about this, it may not go down so well, right? It all depends on how willing your partner is to walk your journey with you of healing, how vested they are, how committed they are into this, so that they're there as your full support. Because somebody who is a victim, somebody who's gone through this kind of abuse, needs a hell of a lot of support. And unfortunately, an abuse survivor will feel guilty for even asking for this kind of support, will feel guilty for even experiencing this sensation, will feel guilty and even blame themselves for the very initial abuse that shouldn't have happened, that did happen when they were below the age of consent. And in any event, regardless of the age of consent, when their brain was not ready and not prepared to be touched or to feel such sensations, Because to feel such sensations, there's a responsibility that comes with this. Not just responsibility, there has to be a deeper understanding. And it is in that a lot of abuse survivors might end up becoming or being perceived as being promiscuous, but you're not, right? You're just that little girl or that little boy going out there trying to rectify or trying to get or set right what went wrong. Except when this is happening, we don't know that. So it'll be one after the other. You're sort of in this spiral and you don't know how to end it until wham, you get this beautiful awakening that will show you, and you will have the tools to start to try to dislodge. Now, when you are going through this, that very first relationship, depending on when it happened, it may create another trauma. So that'll be another trauma that will need to be dislodged, which will create a map about what relationships ought to be like. So that either you're going to be fully transparent in any other relationship after this, or you are not going to be, or you're simply not going to be yourself. Because being yourself as a trauma survivor is a pretty big price to pay, right? Unfortunately, because when you are yourself as an abused person or somebody who's gone through abuse, people don't want to hear about this. Not everybody will have that level of understanding and that level of empathy that you need as a trauma survivor to be able to get through this. Because somebody who's been through this, what they really need, right, is an enlightened witness. Either somebody who's trauma informed and has gone through this themselves, to be able to hold a very safe space of no judgment. Once you're able to get to a point where you have given yourself time to get over the guilt, and remember, it was not your fault as a child because you didn't know anything else to go through those sensations. Those sensations are, if you were to pinch your skin right now, you will feel something, right? Whatever you're going to do, you will feel all of that, but you may not want to feel that, and you will still feel it, right? So we cannot take the blame for what was happening at the time when we couldn't even protect ourselves, right? We were only so little. But what we can do right now, when we have been informed, is to take all the possible steps that we need to create a safe haven within us, starting with us, right? And saying, I am healed right now. I am not that little girl or little boy, and I will take whatever steps that I need to integrate this trauma. And as we do this, you'll find that the dynamics of the relationships that you enter have a huge shift. So the kind of people that you would normally have been attracted to while your trauma was either still in healing or before it even begun its healing will mimic the feelings that initial trauma would have created, right? But when you heal yourself, everything, it's a complete game changer. Or when you become aware that there is a possibility that I might attract these things back to me, that I might call these kind of relationships again, so that I can have a calling card to get me back into that state of the wholesome whole child that I was born as, right? Nobody deserves to be treated like that. Nobody wants to be treated like this. But everything that happens to us is a cycle, is a circle that we will get through, that we are getting through. Look how far you've come, and just remember one thing, right? As long as you have you have the tools that it will take for you to recall all these fragments everywhere that are these missing parts of you. You were whole to begin with, no matter what happened in the middle, and you are whole now, no matter what happened in the middle. Lots of love. Take care of yourself and seek out all the possible help that you need. Take care, because you've got this.